What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to episode 23 of the show with no name. My name is David. Very glad you have joined us today. With me, as always, Pastor Leo.
Hello, ¿cómo está, everyone?
Hello, Pastor Leo.
Hello.
How are you? ¿Cómo está to you, sir?
Oh, I like that.
Thank you.
Tired, but great.
Yeah, me too. We traveled all weekend, and so a lot of driving and late evenings the last few nights for me.
Well, for those of you who
catching
go
up
to PH, this is the Monday after the long weekend where we had
Monday
the
after. I saw the
journey.
pictures of all of that,
Boy.
and
That
got to hear a
was-
it little bit about it from you. It was pretty awesome,
It
and
is.
a lot, I imagine.
It was a great weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wow.
Yeah, it's not only are you like busy, but it's like mentally draining as well because you're learning so much, and
Right.
yeah, that's a lot. Well, I'm glad that you survived.
Yes, and for those of you who went through PH's Gateway and Pathway,
Also glad you
Pastor,
survived.
Congratulations. We all made it.
That's a long time to sit by Pastor Leo.
Mm-hmm.
I've
I
been
know,
I've
right?
been there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why our podcasts are only as long as they are.
That's true.
handle
That is true.
We were in northern Minnesota, and it was very beautiful. Other than the weather, I think you guys had similar weather here just a little bit
Yes.
before it hit us. We were driving around this beautiful lake town, and it would be like whiteout conditions, and then 2 minutes later, not a cloud in the sky above you, and then 5 minutes later, back to a blizzard, and then 2 minutes later from that, no wind, just giant fluffy snowflakes gently falling. And then back to blue sky, and it did this all day long. And I was just like, "This is the weirdest."
You got all
experience.
4 seasons.
We did. I mean, it stayed cold, but it definitely, it was weird. It was very, very bizarre. But that's the joys of living in the north. I think you were inside all day, so
Yes.
it didn't affect you.
Yes. That's true.
Did you have some good food at your all day?
Of course.
That's the most important.
2 different kinds of adobos.
2 different kinds of
Not
adobos.
one of them is chocolate adobo.
Good call after our experience. Did I have the bite with the peppercorn on the? Yeah, I did.
Yep,
yeah,
you did it.
Because the first bite, again, we both tried it, and we both were like, okay, this actually
Right.
it's kind of nice. Like the soy sauce, toffee or whatever it was,
Toffee
wasn't bad.
Yep.
But yeah, that giant peppercorn, ooh, not my thing. And I don't even believe people who say it is. That no one just is like, well, I'm gonna go grab some uncracked peppercorns and just toss them into my mouth like they're sunflower seeds and chomp on them.
Does anyone do that?
No, that's my point. No one likes that. So why would you want it in a chocolate bar? I don't know. Some people said they did, though. I don't know. Hattie seemed like she would have liked it, but who knows?
I still have some.
Yeah.
We can let her
Again,
try.
the bite without that in it was very nice.
Right.
So if you could just
And
go
Ben
through.
did like it.
Yeah, Ben liked it. Pastor Mark said he liked it as well, right? There were a lot of, but I mean, we also said that we liked it. It was
Yep.
but I'm the only one who got the peppercorn.
Yeah, you're the
There's
only one who took a
There's
second
one
bite.
per chocolate bar apparently, and I found it. So, well, we only have 2. Have we talked about this yet on the podcast?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
I think we should probably do that now. So we're gonna.
Oh, we did it a bit.
I thought we
last-
mentioned
yeah.
it, but I'm
Last,
tired.
last,
I don't remember. Okay.
Last episode we did.
So yeah, so we'll be stopping when we're done with Judges.
Yes.
At least for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what the future holds? So we only have 2 left.
God does.
That's a good point. If you want to pause us quick and ask him what the future holds for the show with no name, feel free.
Please let us know.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'm sure you would be interested in hearing that. I'll be gone.
Yes.
So while I will be interested in knowing, it wouldn't
As far as
necessarily
you know.
impact me directly.
As far as you know, you're going to be gone.
Also a good point. Also a good point. But yeah, so we have 2 left because you told me you're going to call a bit of an audible because you're changing things up on us.
Oh, yeah.
We read too much.
Yep.
Is what you've
Too
decided.
much.
Tell me.
Too much.
So tell me what we're doing instead.
Instead of 17 to 19, we're doing 17 to 18.
Okay.
So for those of you who read the 19th chapter, kudos to you.
Extra credit points.
Yep, extra
Yep.
credit points.
This is like, did you ever watch the show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Much like that show, the points don't matter, but you get extra
That's
ones.
true.
So congratulations. We should have been doing that bit the whole time. That would have been.
I know, right?
We'll give you points that don't
Mhm.
matter. So just 17 and 18 today.
Yep, just 17 and
plan.
18.
And then we'll do all of it next episode.
19 to 21.
19 to 21 next
in one
episode.
go.
Which means we have 2 episodes left
Yes.
of the show with no name. And then Leo and I will never speak to
And
one
then
another
it's going to
again.
have a name. Oh, no, just
Oh,
kidding.
yeah. We will finally name it.
Yep.
And
It's the show that
We should-
got canceled.
we should. Oh, no. We should name it. Like, that should be the last thing we do
Right.
for the last episode
Mhm.
is officially give the show a name.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that. Come back next week.
That's true.
But until then, I think we should talk about Judges.
Yes.
You know?
Let's talk about Judges.
The book, not the people group.
No, not Judy. Not.
Joe Brown.
Joe Brown.
Who's the bald white dude who was the boxing ref?
I forgot his name.
I literally don't think I saw 1 second of his actual show, but it came on after something I did watch, and I would see the intro, and it was all about how he broke up. What's the fight? The Tyson and Holyfield fight where he bit the ear. Apparently he was the ref for that fight.
Yep.
And his entire intro was he broke up the so he can handle this courtroom. And I'm like, isn't this like a TV show? What was his name?
I forgot.
Judge boxing ref guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Judge boxing ref.
No, we're not going to talk about them, even though we have currently spent
I
a minute
prepared
talking
for
about
it too.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just.
But instead, we're going to talk about, well, he's kind of not a judge. We'll get into that.
Mm-hmm.
Start with our summary that we have. So instead of our summary of 17 through 19, which is what I was prepared to ask you, I now have to ask you for a summary of what we'll learn from 17 and 18.
Yes.
All right. So what do you got for us here?
You can cut a third of your question,
Ooh.
including the question mark.
Right.
Okay, so summary goes like this. When we filter God through our cultural lens, we make God in our own image and think we're following him when we're actually dishonoring him. So, very ominous.
Yeah. I have my initial question is just the timing of it's very abrupt. It almost seems like a new book started, right? So Samson's dead.
Yes.
Spoiler alert if you didn't join us for the last 22 episodes.
And if you didn't, why?
You missed Samson, huge
And
mistake.
Ehud.
You definitely need to go back for Ehud if you missed that. But so Samson dies, but we don't get any it had been this many number of years since Samson died and this had happened, and we just don't hear anything about it. And the first verse doesn't open with how long it had been, which we're pretty used to at this point. So
Right.
where are we at here?
Well, actually, the story of the Judges technically ends with Samson in chapter 16, and it picks up with Samuel, the last judge, and also, incidentally, a Nazirite. We talked about that last episode. And continues with Samuel, the last judge, before the formal introduction of Israel's monarchy.
So then why are these included if they're, that's the book of Judges and we don't have judges?
I told the writers to do it.
Smart. Yeah, that tracks.
Okay. Why are they there? Chapter 17 to 21. Plus, incidentally, the book of Ruth.
Which comes next.
Which
if I
comes
remember the
next.
song
Yep.
from my childhood that helped me learn the Bible chapter or the books of the Bible in order.
That's right. They show us events that took place at some time, no specific time. It just takes place sometime during the 300 plus years between the death of Joshua and the coronation of the first king, King Saul.
Okay.
Now, why are they important? They give insight into what life in Israel was like during that time, during the period of the Judges, because we always hear about the judge. We hear about Samson and Gideon and Ehud and Deborah and all of that, but this gives us insight into what life was like for the common people. The previous chapter showed us flawed heroes in a cycle of oppression and deliverance. Now, these final chapters don't just focus on heroes. They show us fallen people, ordinary people that seem to be beyond hope and redemption.
Yeah. I think it's also an indication, which we've talked about a lot as we've gone through Judges, is that this book wasn't written with the purpose of being like a history textbook, right? There's been times that you've probably heard us talk, not probably, you've definitely heard us talk about, if you've been listening, these are the numbers given or the number of years given, but it might, they might have rounded that off, or they might have been using it, because that number held a specific purpose.
That's right.
Because again, like this book wasn't written to be like, here is your history textbook. And this is just more evidence, because this isn't just, okay, now we're continuing chronologically, like here's the next thing.
That's right.
That wasn't the sole purpose of this book. Now, there certainly, there was some history of the Jewish people that was involved in it, but that's not the purpose. The sole purpose of this book was not to be a chronological history of this time period. So that's something I was thinking about. And then when I saw when you gave me your notes to look through, I was like, oh yeah, I think we're just seeing more evidence of there was a purpose beyond just history in these things. Well, the first person we meet, because again, we're not going to hang out with any judges during this time, like you just said.
Not anymore.
So the non-judge that we hang out with, who had his own house, the house of Micah. So he probably was like a pretty well-to-do fella.
That's right.
But he, excuse me.
The fall of the house of Micah.
Oh man, and coming to Netflix this fall. And then, we get to verse 6 and we see, our familiar, in those days, there was no king and everyone did what was right in their own eyes, which we hear over and over and over.
Yes.
In Judges. But we hang out with Micah here.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about Micah.
Okay. Here we go. So we see the influence of the extreme amount of idol worship in the region those days. Remember, we talked about that before. It was not just we decided to follow a certain group of gods, and then the next few years a different group of gods. It was just like add on after add on after add on. So,
which was a very common practice at this time. That's why you see so much, can I say, cross-contamination, I guess, between theologies from areas that were around one another. And it didn't just happen in Canaan and that area. Like when you look at Roman, like the Roman pantheon of gods are just the Greek pantheon of gods with slightly different names, or sometimes entirely different names.
That's true.
And so that was normal at the time.
It was very normal.
It was very normal to just adapt and we'll pull this from here and pull this from there.
So here we go. Micah, Hebrew name Michayehu.
I prefer Micah, if I'm being honest.
Mikey boy.
This doesn't seem to be the same Micah who wrote the book of Micah.
No, it's not.
If I'm just based on what I'm reading, I'm guessing this wasn't that guy.
No, he's not. Yeah. He's very not. But the meaning of his name is actually very nice. It means who is like God. So it's very cool. But he gets some money, and his mom immediately uses it to create an idol.
Thanks, Mom.
Yay, thanks, Mom. All right. So,
which again, he gets. They list the exact amount of money that we just read about the 1,100 pieces of silver, which we just, was it 2 chapters ago or something like that? So I find that very interesting. That it's the exact amount of money that is listed. I don't know what it means, but I find it interesting.
Must have meant something back then, but it got lost. But anyway, Micah then hires a Levite as his personal priest. His idea, we read about it.
It sounds like a good idea.
It sounds like a good idea.
I'm going to have my own pastor on staff to advise me spiritually.
That
seems
true.
Like a good move.
That's true. We read about it in verse 13. His idea was by getting lots of air quotes in this one. By getting a religious authority to bless his idolatrous activities, he can force or coerce God to bend to his will. So Micah's way to convince the Levi, again, this is just someone from the tribe of Levi.
Right.
Not
like
really.
It's like a couple verses before that, it says like Micah ordained this young Levi. Like it's not like he was like, oh, this long-serving priest that's been doing this for a lot. No, this was just some kid who happened to be from that tribe. He's like, that guy.
Yep.
I can bend him to my will.
Yep, that is so true. And his way to convince the Levite, it's not about serving God. It's not about serving Israel. I'm going to give you some money. to be my priest. So, yeah.
And a suit.
And a suit. You're right.
Everybody likes
And a fancy suit.
a nice outfit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important.
Fancy outfit,
Yeah.
money, and all the bling. So, so just like many people today, both Micah and that Levite created a god in their own image. So there are several modern day versions of this. When I was writing this, I thought of 3. The first one is the prosperity gospel, where it says that your faith in Jesus will be rewarded with wealth, health, and happiness, guaranteed. The second one is groups who fall for what we talked about in episode 20, the paradox of tolerance. And the third one is any other idea or theology or cultic belief, as long as it is, quote unquote, blessed by a well-known religious figure.
So that brings us to chapter 18.
Yep.
And this is going to blow your mind, Leo. But in chapter 18, it says, in those days there was no king in Israel, and everybody did what was right in there.
What?
Actually, it doesn't say the everyone did what was right in their own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It skips that part.
It skips that part.
It's inferred at this point.
Right.
It's
like,
told.
It's like you guys know the rest.
You can finish the second part on your own by now, but it gives us a quick reminder.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're gonna hear things are about to get weird
Yes.
for Micah and his Levite friend and their idol that mom made.
Okay. So we're gonna start with this chapter with the tribe of Dan.
Which, can I interrupt you real quick?
Go ahead.
We talked about at the beginning of going through Judges. It was like, what are we going to learn? Like, what are we going to be able to apply from Judges?
Right.
And it's been great so far. But as I read 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, I'm like, what? Like, what are we doing? Like, that's a lot. Like, chapter 17 is a lot of just like, what? Like, why do I have this information in my brain now?
That's true.
So I am I'm excited for you to tell us all the things we're going to learn from chapter 18.
Okay. All right. So the tribe of Dan. Let's talk about the tribe of Dan real quick. This tribe had some trouble settling down in the promised land. Why? If you go back to the very first episode, we talked about in Judges 1, verse 34, the Danites. This is the group that saw the Amorites, and they were like, could you leave? And the Amorites were like, yeah, make us. And they were like, no, just kidding. Y'all can stay.
Yeah.
So the Danites were scared. They were forced to look for somewhere else to stay instead of settling in the place that was assigned to them. So during that time, they had trouble, so they sent a delegation of 5 warriors to explore the land. And while exploring, they arrived at Micah's house, and they met the Levite, Micah's personal priest. The warrior then asked the priest to find out if their mission would be successful, and the priest assured them it would be.
He did, but based on what we've read and what we've been talking about, he doesn't seem to be, well, like we said, he's not like a real priest. he's like a fake one. And so he's probably just making that up and using, God told me this thing that I just made up just so that they would trust him. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. Because you'll see there, if you read the verses, it doesn't say that he prayed to God or asked God.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
And then it doesn't say that he came back and gave them the answer. It was more like, are we going to be successful? And he was like, yeah, dude, go ahead.
Go get after it.
Yep. Go. Have it your way. You do you, boo-boo. So the lesson here is, I got 2 lessons for us at this point. First one, Matthew 24 verse 11 says, many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. This is a perfect example of it. Many people become deceived because they're not really looking for God's wisdom. They have already made up their minds. They just need validation. They just need someone to say, yeah, I agree. Have at it. But even for those who are really seeking wisdom and guidance, this is the second lesson. Be very careful whose wisdom you're seeking. Because if you're not careful, you might meet someone like this Levite who just gives you whatever you want to hear. And you're on your way to somewhere else. Yeah. So in verses 7 to 10, the Danite spies arrive at Laish, The spies thought that place would be a perfect place for the tribe to stay. Contributing factor, the Laishites. It's hard to say.
That one's tough, man.
The people of that place
Yeah.
did not suspect any trouble was coming, and so were vulnerable, unlike the Amorites who just said, nope, make us. And they were like, yeah, come on in. And they were like, yeah, this is good. This is very easy. So another lesson, the effect of living in peace, tolerance, and quote unquote, the idea of neutrality is it gives us a false sense of security, and it will eventually leave us vulnerable to the enemy. So that's another lesson. So how was that? 3 now? Okay. Now in verses 11 to 29, the Danites decide to occupy Laish. So led by 600 soldiers, they pass by Micah's house, they empty his shrine, and turn his personal priest, the Levite, against him. So if you remember, Micah was using money. He used money to convince him to be his priest. And that backfires badly because the Levite accepts their offer. They want to give him more money. And Micah was silenced when the Danites threatened to kill him and his household. It's like, wait. And it's like, really? You want to get hurt? And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Right. So when they get to Laish, the Danites find a peace-loving people who put up almost no resistance. They attacked them, burned their city, and sadly, no one rescued them. And so the Danites settled there, naming the place Dan. So 4th lesson already. Wow.
That's a lot of lessons.
It's a lot of lessons.
I don't like learning that much.
Lessons with this one. Remember again the paradox of tolerance. You're letting people say, do whatever they want. And that means that we must also tolerate the mean stuff that they say or do. But when we do, the mean folks are the ones who usually dominate. Perfect example, this story. Perfect example, the things that are happening today. So in verses 30 to 31, the Danites then turn to idolatry. Probably the Levite that they asked them to help them out did not help.
Right. Well, they brought the idol with them.
It's like they take this, so you don't need to create more.
Right. And then he's like, well, you won, and I told you you would, so now worship this idol thing that I had with us.
So, they set up a place of worship using the idols they got from Micah and continue living the way they wanted. So 5th lesson already. Notice God's absence in all of this.
Yeah.
No God at all. There was nothing about God. I mean, there's that pretend ask God thing from the Levite, but many people live the same way even today. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the one time they do mention God during that is when they say they set up the carved image in the house.
Right.
That they,
and like, that's not even God at all.
Cool. Yeah. So we've talked about this. We've been going through learning about the Holy Spirit at New Hope. And we talked about the gifts of the Holy Spirit, spiritual gifts recently. Oh. And, we talked a little bit about how like they're not, the gifts of the Holy Spirit aren't like a genie. Like, okay, Leo has the gift of whatever and I need it right now. So I'm going to, go get him to do it for my sake or whatever. And it's kind of what you see here with Micah was that way with the Levite. And then the Danites were kind of that way with the Levite too. Just there were more of them. So they won, where they just kind of, okay, like we want God to just fill this minor role that we have, and then we'll replace him, or we'll just put anything else we want in that thing as long as we can call on him when we need him.
Yep.
Yeah. That's not great, I'm guessing. That's what you're going to say.
Like, what's my gift? A brand new car.
Or a brand new idol.
Yeah, brand new idol.
Micah's mom.
Yeah. So, yep. So, okay. I know that was short, but there's a lot of lessons there already.
You did give us a lot of lessons. More than I expected we'd be able to learn. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, it's true. If you think about it, all of that just makes sense. And again, that's the reason why we have these chapters. It shows us that it's not just the judges who are easily corrupted. We're seeing people here, and We talked about this before too. There was no God. They did not seek God. They did not repent. They did not say, "Sorry, God, can you rescue us?" It's just corruption after corruption after corruption. So here's the bottom line for this episode. Israel redefined God through their own cultural lens. That is something that we do even today. They lost sight of his law or ignored it altogether. Micah's story paints a picture of the entire nation of Israel's twisted view of God. Again, so many people do that today too. They thought they could use him for their own personal gain, to get a car or a personal plane, so that you can avoid flying with a...
That actually sounds great.
Yep.
Now that you mention it, though, I'd take
right.
one of those.
But worship was only necessary for blessing, not honoring God.
Yeah, I think that's the part that we can easily connect ourselves to.
That's
it, right?
true, right?
Okay, I really need. I know I'm guilty of that at times too, where I'm like, okay, I gotta, like, I have a really big ask that I'm asking right now in my prayers, so we'll put worship music on the way to church today. You know, like, had a big ask. Let's make sure he knows that I like him.
We talked about that just yesterday too, when we talked about, you guys talked about the Holy Spirit. Our topic last Sunday was, why didn't God answer my prayer? And one of the things that we talked about there was, we keep asking God, like, bless me, bless me, bless me, and then we don't honor God by giving him our teas, our times, our treasure, and our talents. And we just keep, bless God, but I'm not going to worship God. I use it somewhere else. So instead of revering God, they insulted him, which is something that we need to be very careful we're not doing. So we too fall into the same trap. We use the filter of our cultural mindset to see God the way we want him to be, instead of seeing him as he is. We believe the lie that we can manipulate God into giving us what we want. Interestingly and incidentally, that was my message yesterday at PH. God is not a vending machine of goodness. I'll say that again. He's not a 7-Eleven of blessings. And one of the bottom lines that we came up with is, God is not a button to be pushed, but a relationship to be pursued. When we lose sight of who God truly is, we start falling for and following a God of our own making. So this is your reminder. If you're listening or if you're watching right now, this is your reminder. Return to the real God. So here's your head change, heart change, and life change for this episode. Head change is this: identify the ways we filter God and his truth through our own cultural lens. Your heart change: feel remorse over the ways we've made God into our own image. And your life change is this: evaluate the way we think about God and choose to allow the Bible, not culture, to shape the way we view God.
And you got questions for us today, Leo?
My name. No, I'm just kidding.
I still don't know.
All right. Okay, first one. What are some factors in your life that affect your view of God? And then second question. What are some attributes of God that are particularly hard for you to embrace, and why? I think this is a good one for the comments.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then the third one is, what could you do to treasure God this week?
Yeah. I think that second question in particular, which, by the way, you can find the questions in the podcast notes or in the video description on YouTube. So you don't have to just memorize everything Leo just said. But yeah, I think that second question is a good one, because I know, like, there's a lot of them for a lot of people, especially we're going through the Old Testament right now. The Old Testament Yahweh is hard for a lot of people to, like, get. I know I've even said that a couple times as we've been going through Judges. Like, man, it's hard to understand why God would ask them to do that. Like, that sounds awful. I mean, you go back one book, right? We go into Joshua, and how many different times they're, required to wipe out entire people groups, men, women, children, the animal. I mean, and you're like, how, like, that's tough for me to get a grip on how that's the God I think that I'm serving as I, have gotten to know Christ. And
that's true.
So I think it's okay for us to to wrestle with those things. It's certainly better than just pretending we don't have those doubts or those questions or whatever, and then never dealing with them, and then they make things worse. So I would love to hear some chatting about that one. And then our next step.
Judges 19 to 21.
What if I already read Judges 19? Do I have to reread it?
You have to read it from Judges 1.
Oh, so if you already read 19, which we told you to do, you now have to read the whole thing.
I'm just kidding.
You have to read it backwards, actually.
Read backwards. Or read it in Tagalog.
Backwards. Oh, yes. What if you don't speak Tagalog? Still in Tagalog?
If you don't speak Tagalog, then you have to read it in Tagalog.
Yeah.
If you do speak Tagalog, you have to read it in Chinese.
Yeah, there you go. and there's like 26 different kinds of Mandarin, I think. You can pick whichever kind you want, as long as it's one you don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I like this.
And then you have to record yourself.
Yeah. And please let us know how that goes. All right. Well, we will read those, and then we'll be back next week for our last episode of Judges, our last time hanging out together on this podcast, Leo. We'll hang out together outside of this podcast. Well, at least I think so. Maybe Leo might be thinking, this is the last time we're ever going to speak to one another.
Yep.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm not even going to look in his direction.
We'll just walk by each other in the office, and you're just doing one of these. I'm like, Leo, over here, Leo. Well, we're going to get back to our uncomfortable off-camera relationship now, but I hope you enjoyed our friendly on-camera relationship. And we really do hope that you've been enjoying and learning and growing with us as we've gone through Judges. That's the purpose of this podcast. It's not just so Leo will have to talk to me. It is so that we can continue to grow.
That is true.
Go grow and give the heart of our mission here at New Hope for a reason. And this is just one of many ways you can continue to grow in your relationship with Christ through the week. And so thank you, Leo, for providing that for us every single week.
You're welcome.
I'm excited to finish out Judges with you. Until then, we love you, New Hope family, and we will see you next time.
Ingat.